I'm talking today about my conversion from being an investor to being a speculator. It's an odd transition, odd one to make late in life. Why am I doing it? I've always been an investor. I invested in real estate. I bought one of these houses when I moved to Washington, D.C. in 1976. I bought another one as an investment a couple years later. Made perfect sense. You put your down payment in, and then the monthly payments coming in pay the mortgage going out, and inflation makes the value of the house go up, and you make money. The stocks I bought made sense. I worked for IBM. IBM made computers, which everybody needed. The value of the stock went up. After I left IBM, it was Oracle, who made databases that everybody needed, went up. Cisco Systems made the backbone of the internet, it went up. Stocks provided companies that I invested in provided products that people needed, and it made sense. Then my family, my first family, my woke family, pretty much rejected me. They had never had any interest in investing, so there wasn't much use in planning to pass money on to them, and my wife rejected me. I got divorced and moved to Ukraine, got married again, started a new family. I invested conservatively with the little bit of money that I had taken out of the first marriage. I put the money into gold ETFs, among other things, conservative investments, and we pretty much live off of my IBM pension and my Social Security income. But things change. Your strategy has to change. First of all, chaos reigns in the world. You may have noticed that there's no stability in society and investments in anything. I'm halfway through raising my second family, and it's time to say, we've got enough to see our way through. Let's be a little bit more on the risk-taking side. Third, I need to teach my son Eddie how to manage money. He's a pretty smart kid. I think he'll do well. And he has to manage it not for himself, but for the rest of the family, particularly for my wife, my third wife. None of them have had any interest in managing money. He'll have to do it. Now, I'll say that women, we can't do without them for raising families, but they're generally not interested in money. There have been exceptions. Hetty Green, the Witch of Wall Street, was one of the most successful investors of the 19th century. All of the magnatees that I'm going to talk about later in this speech came to her for advice. There aren't any women like that today. So we see no more stability. Interest rates don't make sense. The Federal Reserve kept interest rates in the United States unreasonably low, around 1 or 1.5% for a number of years, encouraging people to buy things that they really couldn't afford, huge houses, big trucks and stuff like that, because the payments were so low. Now they can't keep it down anymore. The payments are going up. They've been printing money, which should have caused a great deal of inflation, but it didn't until now. Inflation's taking off. Politicians have been forcing investments that didn't make sense. They forced investment in solar panels, putting a lot of government money there, and encouraging private investors to put their money likewise. Same with wind turbines, electric cars, and the COVID shots and all sorts of jabs. Government is forcing investment decisions. It's not stable. And then there are some outright frauds. Now, there have always been frauds. You can think back throughout time. The new ones have a different flavor. They're companies that come from nowhere. They're hyped on the internet, social media. There's very little investment research to back them up. Some of them have investment research like Tesla, but people don't follow the advice. And there are legions of greater fools. So however much you pay for a share in Tesla, there's always somebody to take it off your hands for more. So it's a curious investment environment. And here are the outright frauds. Elizabeth Holmes, she's a good-looking woman. It had something to do with getting guys like Henry Kissinger to invest in her company. It supposedly made blood analysis devices that would give you a result immediately instead of taking a week's worth of lab work. It was a total fraud. People lost billions. Sam Bankman-Fried had a cryptocurrency fund. What he did was take money from new investors and use it to bribe politicians, Joe Biden and the Democrats up and down the line, and they left him alone for a while, but eventually the fraud was uncovered. And there are some questionable things like Robinhood, the internet brokerage, and Dogecoin, and in fact all the cryptocurrencies that don't get too much inspection. A lot of funny things going on. The government favorites for investment, as I said, make no sense. Windmills have a life expectancy of 10 to 20 years, and what do you do with them? You can't recycle them. And the wind doesn't blow all the time. It makes no sense. Solar panels don't make sense either. This is a pile of junked solar panels. They don't last forever, and they only work when the sun shines. Not much sunshine in Germany. And electric vehicles like these buses bought in Namibia. Why do they need electric buses? Because somebody talked them into it. It makes no sense. But these things are good in a way for an investor, because when government's hyping it on the way up, you invest with the government and you make money on the way up. And then when everybody realizes it's stupid, 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 and starts selling the stock, you go short and you make money on the way down. The government has always had an influence on markets. This is the third house I bought, which I bought for $50,000. It's now worth $900,000. Government was all the way involved. I bought it with a low interest loan, low down payment. I only put $5,000 into a $50,000 investment. I made low monthly payments. My mortgage was insured by the government, and they give incentives for first-time buyers in my case. Now the incentives go to people whose skin is a different color than mine, but the government has its hand in all over. And this investment, this $50,000 house, is worth $900,000 today. That's 6% return on investment over 50 years. Not a bad deal. Single-family housing has gone up everywhere. Everybody has invested in it. Now, what could go wrong with single-family housing? A lot of people own houses for appreciation, not to live in them. So they have it as an investment. And the houses more and more stand empty because nobody can afford the rent, and renters are a hassle. However, squatters take over, particularly in places like San Francisco and Oakland, and the police won't drive them out. So there's your investment. You can't sell it, you can't use it. More than that, there's demographic chaos, as the people who would like to buy your house are people with children, but the people like you in this room aren't having children. The people who do have children are poor people, and they're immigrants. They can't afford it. So you're looking for a greater fool to buy that house? There are fewer and fewer of them. The magic money tree, modern monetary theory, I got that wrong, is coming to the end of its rope. They can't print money forever the way they've been doing, although hard to predict when it will end, but they cannot print money forever. So we have a perfect storm. If you time it right, like Michael Burry did for The Big Short in 2008. Another such moment is coming. We just have to have our eyes open and see when it's coming. Now, the government has a big impact on things other than housing. For instance, on education. They guarantee student loans, which means students have a lot of money, which means colleges can charge more tuition, which means there's a push for minorities to attend, which means that there's a lot of useless coursework, which means, there are government contracts. The government does a lot of business with these colleges. They award contracts and they say as a condition you have to do all these other stupid things. So there's money to be made somewhere in this, shorting the government contractors or somehow shorting student loans. I don't know how to do it, but there's stupidity at work. There's got to be money to be made. So what's going to change? There will be, as I said, a financial collapse. There is an exodus from the big cities where these overpriced, empty, single-family houses are, because people don't want to live in the cities because taxes are too high, crime is rampant, and the police are scared to do anything because of the color of the perpetrators. They don't look like me. There are fewer handouts for the welfare cases and the immigrants, so there'll be some unhappy people when the government cash flow stops coming. And there are fewer smart people, as I've said. Let me tell you the books on that. Ed Dutton has a book, At Our Wits' End. Richard Lynn had one called Dysgenics. Smart people aren't having children. Smart people like you and me aren't having children. Who is? Not smart people who look like you and me, and dumb people who don't look like us. And those are our immigrants. Excuse me for saying that. It takes smart people to be good investors, and people are not good investors. Okay, here's a history of investment in the United States, century by century. In the 19th century, we had the robber barons who made steamships. People needed to go places. Railroads, steel to build all this stuff, electric generation to power our homes and industry, light, recording, and all sorts of electronic marvels. And we had the telephone, and we had energy, and people made the equivalent of billions and billions of dollars in today's money providing these things. And you know what? They got rich, but people didn't mind because the common man benefited from all of these inventions. It went on into the 20th century. A few more: automobiles, radio, air travel, computers improved our lives immensely. But the 20th century was also about satisfying our wants. With the newfound money, the riches that those 19th century robber barons had put into everybody's pockets went to satisfying our wants. Music and film, air conditioning, cruise vacations, European vacations, saunas, all sorts of stuff like that, sailing, skiing, skateboarding, amusements, professional sports sprang up. College became a mandatory thing for everybody, even the least intelligent among us. And information in print was in great demand. Books, magazines, newspapers, television for the masses, and fast food. All of these things were conveniences, and they were bought by a grateful public and who were not at all disappointed to see people make money. 21st century is different. We have artificial wants and needs. Some of these made by government. Social media. They got us chained down every day, feeding us propaganda, wasting our time, making us feel inadequate by looking at pictures of people more beautiful than us. We have video games to keep us occupied. when we can't get those beautiful women that we see on the internet. We have ethical drugs, so-called by the pharmaceutical company. They're not ethical at all. Things like oxycodone to cure your pain and make you addicted. Things like Prozac to calm you down and make you commit mass murders, if you read the books. Things like the weight reduction drugs, which get you addicted. Things like the hypertension drugs that get you addicted and don't do you any good in the long run. All sorts of ethical drugs. And then there are, of course, the lifestyle drugs that used to be called illegal drugs, things like marijuana, LSD, magic mushrooms. They're now mostly legal, and if they're not, the laws aren't enforced, and people take them anyhow to their detriment. We have lifestyle borrowing. Everybody has a bunch of credit cards, and we borrow to the max to support our habits, and we have given up on having kids. I think I mentioned kids before. Instead, we have things like Tinder and Grindr, dating apps, for basically just for sex, and we have sex bots if you don't want to bother with real people. These do not satisfy real healthy needs. That's the 20th century, 21st century. Now these, you might call them judgments on my part, so I suppose they are, but they're more observations because we will invest accordingly. If we're wrong, we'll lose money. Our investment hypothesis is that stupidity is endemic. I showed you one of the best investors of the 19th century. Here's one of the worst investors of the 21st century, Kathy Wood, who has lost $14 billion for investors. She's still rich. People still believe in her. People are pretty dumb. If I'm wrong, once again, with what I've said here, I'll lose money. So you can feel sorry for me or not. So here's my investment thesis. We'll look at the motivations and mentalities behind the people who are making investments and the things being invested in. We will look at what government's up to and how they're driving investment decisions. And we will make money from government stupidity, but not just government stupidity, anybody's stupidity. And that involves speculation. That involves betting on things on the way up and betting on them as they crash. There don't seem to be that many long-term investments that are worthwhile as there were in the 19th century. But you can make a long-term investment in stupidity. That's one you can count on. Madam Toastmaster.